In this video, I'm going to be looking over this Graflex Speed Graphic 4x5 camera. Now, I recently made another video in which I demonstrated a different speed graphic that I was selling, and I'm also going to be selling this one. And I'm making this video primarily to show prospective buyers what is good and what might be wrong with this camera, but also just to show anybody who might have one of these a little bit more about it and how you might use it. And I have not shot a speed graphic since 1987, so that is 38 years ago. But I remember using it. It was the baby version of this camera that was the 2 1/4 by 3 1/4, and much smaller, but very similar in how it works. So let's start looking at this one. I pulled the bellows forward here, and there's some stops here, and then there's the rack and pinion focusing right here. I think there are times when you want to pull that bellows farther ahead, and so you can push this in and flatten those out and pull this way out here like that and lock it at different places. I don't know exactly how you decide when to do that, but we'll just pull it forward to there. This camera has both a shutter in the lens assembly and a focal plane shutter. That was the speed graphic had that. The crown graphic did not have a focal plane shutter. So this one has both. And I thought we'll first look at this shutter. And I noticed that I cannot turn this beyond the 200th of a second. There's a 400th over here, but the dial doesn't want to go there, and I'm not going to force it. But let's just step down through the shutter speeds that we can get from here. I should also point out now, if we've got this set for front, then this button right here will trip the shutter. And it did. Okay, let's do that again. We can also just trip it right here. Okay, so there's a 200th of a second, 1/100th, and 1/50th, 1/25th, 1/10th, 1/5, 1/2. This might be a little bit sluggish. Let's listen to that. Half. The full second. It completes the cycle, but I sound a little bit hesitant. That's on the full 1 second. I think that's a little more than a second. Maybe it's close. And the bulb setting, where it just stays open as long as I hold that and then let up. Or on the time setting, which is going to be useful here. I'll show you that in a minute. There it opens, and then it closes when you press it again. So we are going to open that up, because now if we want to try the focal plane shutter, this shutter needs to be open. And then now the focal plane shutter we control with this key here. We wind this up, and there's a window here, and there's a few settings that you can get. But I wound it all the way up, and now this window right here shows 1/1000th of a second right there. And then now if we flip this to the back, now this button will control this shutter. And now about all you're going to be able to see is this key turn, and maybe you'll see a number in there, but let's trip this. Okay, so that was 1/1000th of a second. Now it shows 250 in here, so it'll be 1/250th of a second. And then there's I think that's a 50, so a 50th of a second. And then, is that a T? I think it's a T for time. Yes, it is. And so now it shows O, which means it's open. So now we actually have both shutters open. So let's look in the back here on this ground glass screen. We can flip this open, and now we can see that, I wonder if I could just, if I put my hand out in front of here, we can see I can't get it far enough away for it to be in focus. Maybe this would be a case where if I if I flip these things down and pull this forward a little bit more, no, doesn't seem to be the case. Well, almost. So you can see now my hand is out in front of there, and then you could compose your picture on this ground glass screen, focus, and get it the way you want. And then if you wind this key up, it closes the focal plane shutter, and then you could wind that up to whatever speed, whatever you want it at, and take the picture using either the focal plane shutter or the shutter in the lens, and you have to pick one or the other, and the other one has to be open. So, and you just have to remember that. A few other things to look at here. I'm just going to fold that up. This camera has this for holding the film holders, and you'd typically have a film holder that would hold two pieces of film, one on one side and one on another, and you would shove that in here, and then you'd pull a slide out which would expose bare film in there pointed at the lens, and then you would take the picture using one of the shutters, and then you could put the slide back in, which would make that side light tight, pull the whole holder out, flip it around and push it back in, and pull the slide that's in front of that piece of film out, and take your next picture and then put that slide back in, and then you'd do something on that holder to indicate that that was exposed, and put that in your camera bag, and then you'd get another holder. And because you only get two pictures per side, or per holder, you need a whole bunch of those holders. There were some options as well for some roll film and some film packs and things, and in order to do that you can take this whole back off of here, and so we'll just pull that back, and I think you just pop these, and then this whole assembly comes right off. And now here we can actually see the focal plane shutter, and so there it's open, and there it's closed, but yeah, and then here is the ground glass focusing screen, and this whole assembly. And so to put that back in, we just snap that over and flip these up so that it can't come back out again. This camera has a rangefinder right here, and you look through here, and then as you focus you can get two images kind of superimposed, and when you get that horizontally, well, on this one, because there's one above the other, you're trying to get two images superimposed this way. I noticed there's just a little bit of misalignment sideways too, so that there must be some adjustment that needs to be done to fix that. So the rangefinder does generally work, but it's off a little bit this way between the top and the bottom. So be aware of that. One nice thing about these cameras is they have the ability to switch lenses fairly easily, and these lens boards pop out like this. You can just take those, and then here we have the lens. While it's open here, let's look at a couple of things. One is the aperture, so we can see that that works. And if we were to look through there toward a bright LED light, and I see some what looks like fingerprints, but also some other stuff inside, some specks and haze and stuff. I don't know exactly what that is, but be aware it's not a perfectly clean lens. If we look on the back here, you can see the lens on the back here as well. And then if we look into the camera, we can see that's right through to the ground glass screen back in there. And so the lens, we can just carefully set that back in place and push these in to lock it in place. Now this camera has adjustability of raising and lowering this front section, which is useful for some types of photography. I never did that. I don't know when you'd want to do that, but sometimes you do. It has an extra kind of a quick viewfinder up here on the top. And if we can just pull that up like that, and then let's get that up there where we can see that. And then there's a little thing that flips up in the back. And if you look through here and frame your picture in that, that's approximately what you get in the picture. So that works. Let's put that back down. The other thing is this viewfinder here. And with that, there's actually some little inserts that go in here that will adjust the field of view, probably based on what lens you're using and what format film you're using. If you're using a roll film holder or something where it's smaller, maybe you've got a smaller one there. I think this will allow you to clamp a flash on here. And there's just a strap over here for helping hold the camera. So, I think that's most of what I wanted to show on this one. So I'm going to push this back in, close that up. Oh, we'll put the lens cap back on and close that up. So that's a quick look at the condition of this camera, and it's got some wear and tear. I think this one's probably from the 40s, late 40s maybe, though I'm not a real expert on exactly when all the different versions of these were made. But classic old 4x5 Graflex press camera, the Speed Graphic.